Hello and welcome to another episode of Into the Afroverse with your host, William Jones. And Into the Afroverse is where we're taking Black folks into the future. Today we are rejoined by Lamard Cher-Aimé. And as you may recall from the previous conversation, Lamard Cher-Aimé is a Haitian-American artist, writer, and director, voice actor, and the creator of Captain Zero. And Lamar was born with an intense love for animation and the arts. And he's also a suicide survivor. We talked about that last week. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it this week, as well as his project, Captain Zero. And his company, they have cutting edge animation. It's a production company, and they specialize in creating animated stories that defy expectations and forward thinking and innovative storytelling. And with that, one more time, let's welcome back Mr. Cher-Aimé. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me back.
Excellent. Yeah, and part of the reason why I wanted to keep the conversation going is because I felt like there was so much more to say, and your message about mental health, not just your project, and obviously that's your vehicle to get the message out. And I'm a comic book nerd and all of that stuff, so I just love that. But I also think that the bigger thing is the message that you're getting out and your own personal story. And as I mentioned the last time we were talking, I just think that it's going to be helpful to so many people. So I wanted to have you come back, talk a little bit more about your project, your work, and see what we can do to, give some folks some hope and some
Mhm,
help. Okay.
mhm.
So last time we were talking, um, you was sharing with us the research that went into the project. And you
Yes.
were talking about how you studied philosophy, and of course, you looked at mental health as an issue. What other things were involved in putting this together in terms of the research that went into this?
So something that is very central to the narrative of Captain Zero is focusing a lot on Black history,
Mhm.
various Black historical events that have happened that have not only like changed the course of Black people's lives here in America, but things that are also just super, super influential just American history overall, and so many things that I feel like are glossed over that not enough people know about. So I did a lot of extensive research on various historical things that have happened, whether inside the Black community or to Black people in general. So for example, the creation of hyperhumans. So that's essentially what we call all superpowered people in Captain Zero's universe. They're called hyperhumans. And the very first hyperhuman, her name is Asheria Lack, and that is taken from Henrietta Lacks. And anyone who's familiar with Henrietta Lacks, knows that she was the Black woman who was essentially experimented on. They were found out that her cells had this amazing regenerative ability, and they were basically taken from her without her consent when she went in to get a cancer screening. And basically, these cells are still used in medicine today. It was the very first ever immortal cell line, and they were used to create vaccines, all various different kinds of medications. And these medical industries have made billions of dollars using these women's cells. And it wasn't until actually recently
Yes.
that a lawsuit was just settled with her family, finally being able to get, some kind of justice for all of the years that they've been using this woman's cells to do
Right.
all of these amazing things with science. But in Captain Zero, the very creation of hyperhumans actually has to do with a very similar kind of situation with the Shiri Lactis, this young Black girl who essentially goes in to donate plasma. They find out that inside her plasma, she has these, cells that can do these amazing things. She's then abducted, experimented on, and then that's when they discover that inside her cells they have all of these amazing abilities, and then they essentially try to figure out how they can take that and utilize it,
Right.
without spoiling too much of the stuff that we're going to reveal
Yeah.
in the show, through a series of events. Later on, through a chemical spill, the same active element that was inside her cells is then released to the essentially the lower income community that is inside New Troy City, the fictitious city in Florida where Captain Zero takes place. And of course, it's a low income, impoverished neighborhood. So that means it's predominantly Black and brown people there. So predominantly Black and brown people are the people that become hyperhumans. And surprise, surprise, because that's the case, they outlaw hyperhumans being able to use their powers and abilities in public, and hyperhumans essentially become kind of second-class citizens. So things like that were really, really important for me to do research on and discover. There's this other element about this prison industrial complex that we talk a lot in Captain Zero, and how there's this whole thing about hyperhumans being criminals and over criminalized and policing them, and the initiatives that they tried to do, and how inside this prison it's essentially told to the people as if it's going to be this good, great public health service that's going to keep people safe. But in reality, they're experimenting
Right.
on all of these, inmates to try to figure out all these different medical advancements they can make with these hyperhumans. And that's a real thing.
Yes.
Like the prison that they're doing all of this in is called the Terror Dome. Well, it's nicknamed the Terror Dome. Right. And that name is actually taken from a real life prison in Philadelphia that was nicknamed the Terror Dome, that this actually happened in, where they experimented on predominantly Black inmates. So all of these things are things that have really, really happened that I kind of wanted to bring to the forefront of people, to have people go like, wow, that's crazy. I can't believe like that happened in the show, for people to have moments where it's like, no, but that really happened. Like, go look it up. Like, there's a whole history of this stuff. So yeah, research for the show, especially research for Black history, has been super, super important.
And what's crazy is when you look at the history of Black folk on this planet, not just in this country, but on this planet, when you read it, many chapters of our lives sound like something out of a comic book.
It does.
If you just told people this and they had no knowledge of the world, no knowledge of history, it wouldn't sound real.
No.
So it's not too much of a leap to take it from the real world and place it in the pages of comics. As you were talking, one of the first books popped in my head, of course, the Henrietta Lacks story, as you mentioned, and Medical Apartheid was another one that came to mind. It just outlines this long history, this ugly history of experimentation on Black folk. And people wonder why the Black community is so distrustful of the medical community today. It's no accident. There's a reason. So I'm glad that you're highlighting it. So what other things can we look for in your book in terms of touching on real world issues? What other types of things, what other themes have you found running through your work?
So first, Captain Zero is a series. We do eventually have plans to make comic books and whatnot, but the intended goal for the show is always to be a full-fledged television show. But as far as themes go, really themes. So the story is obviously centered about, Xerxes, as we follow his journey and trying to, well, first and foremost, his diagnosis of finding out that he has major depressive disorder, how he then first deals with it, comes to terms with it, and then eventually how he comes to accept it, because they're very similar to, I think, most people that kind of have this experience, especially for me in my experience. I was getting a lot of people around me that were like, what? Like, nah, that's not a thing. Like, you just need to exercise some more and get some more sunlight, or take it to Jesus. Everything will be fine.
Pray it away.
Pray it away.
Yes.
And all those things are well and good on their own, but there's more that needs to be done when it comes to awareness, what these things are specifically doing to your mind, to your brain chemistry. How to better create other safety nets so you can have and develop healthier trains of thought, so you can then combat some of these negative things that you're dealing with. So first and foremost, it's a coming of age story of watching this young Black boy deal with this mental health diagnosis. But then it's also about Blackness and the experience in itself, and Blackness not being monolithic through the various other Black characters that we see throughout the show. And then again, like we just talked about, it's also a treatise on Black history. There are so many different elements about things that have happened to Black people in this country and abroad that we put inside this show. So, man, that Captain Zero really is supposed to be a very multi-layered show that I kind of want to, like, I kind of tell people all the time, like, I'm kind of tricking people when I tell them it's a superhero show, because I'm like, it's not really about superheroes.
Right.
Like that's the stuff that's interesting and enticing and will definitely get people to want to tune in. But when you sit down and watch the short film that's getting ready to come out next year, and then the series, what I believe people are really going to fall in love with is these characters, their world and their stories, the things that they go through as people, the various philosophies that we begin to extrapolate as he tries to come to terms with his various issues and the problems that he comes up against.
Right.
So yeah, I think those are all going to be the things that really stick with people when they see the show.
Yeah, so this is just more the superhero medium animation. This is just a vehicle, and
Yeah.
you're just taking us to these places that you want to bring us to and making us aware of these things that many of us may not be fully aware of or can fully appreciate. And I think it's great to use this as a teaching tool. I can see this thing not only just being in people's private homes, but being used on college campuses, being used for young people as a way to
Yeah.
again, get them to confront and deal with those issues. So I'm just fascinated. Once again, I can't say it enough. I'm just fascinated by the overall work and message that you're delivering. So once again, if you're just joining us, this is Into the Afroverse with your host, William Jones. And Into the Afroverse, we're taking Black folks into the future. So tell us one more time, how can folks find your work?
So you can find me on all social media platforms at Lamard Cher-Aimé. That is LAMARDCHERAIME. And then you can follow Captain Zero and all of our updates regarding our upcoming short film and then subsequent series at Captain Zero TAS. And that is on all social media platforms.
Excellent. So you're developing this show, you're developing this series.
Mhm.
Anyone who's attached to this, how is this thing kind of manifesting? Some folks may not know how these things work behind the scenes, but how are you bringing this to life? I'm assuming
Oh,
there's a team or there's some other folks
man.
involved. How is this, coming to fruition?
Oh man, that's actually a great story. But
Okay.
let me first tell you about the people that we have attached. So attached to the series overall, we have the amazing Keith David,
Wow.
Angelica Ross, Trace Lizette, Gary Leroy Gray, Zoli Griggs, Marion Toro, Coty Galloway. Um, is that everybody? I believe that's everybody that we have attached
Right,
to
right.
the series so far. We're gonna make some more attachments as we get closer to the show being in development. But for the short film itself, you're going to hear the voices of Keith David, Angelica Ross, Zoli Griggs, Coty Galloway, Marion Toro, and myself as Xerxes Hughes, Captain Zero.
Excellent.
Um,
Keep going.
yeah, as far as how this all came together, it came about in the wildest way possible.
Mhm.
So this was back in I want to say 2020. So something that I'm very, very intentional about, and this happened ever since I first created Captain Zero. I Whenever I write characters, I try to think of a specific actor in mind
Mhm.
to do the voice of the character. And I literally remember when I first created the Depression Demon, I was like, no other person could do this justice except for Keith David. Keith David is the only one. He was the voice I heard in my head every time I wrote dialogue for the Depression Demon. I'm like,
Right.
no one else can deliver like the cold, sinister, deep voice of like Xerxes' monologue. Let's bring him down other than Keith David. Like he's got to be the
Right.
person to do it. So fast forward to 2020, and I'm working on another character on the show named Oblivion, who the year previously I had just watched Pose on FX, which is an amazing, like, oh my gosh, I can't stop singing the show's praises.
Right.
Of how great the show was because it brought me into this whole new world and experience of blackness that at that point in time I had been not very familiar with. I didn't know anything about ballroom culture.
Gotcha.
So I'm watching the show and I see Angelica Ross and she's just giving the performance of her life. And I'm like, my goodness, this woman is amazing. I need to work with her. So just randomly, I put out a tweet and I'm like, and I pair it with a drawing that I made of the character Oblivion. And I was like, yo, Angelica Ross, I've got this character and I literally designed them after you. I hear their voice
Wow.
every single time I write for this character. It would mean the world to me if you voice this character. And I just put it out there. I just put it out there into the universe just to be like, let me just say it so it's said,
Right.
so that people know that this is my intention, setting my intention.
Right.
And I put it out there. Little did I know, like 30 minutes later, I check my Twitter again and I see she's commenting underneath it. And she's like, wow, this looks amazing. I would love to be a part of it. Tell me more.
That's incredible.
And I'm like, what? Yeah, I want to tell you more. So
Right.
she's like, yeah, DM me, send me a message. So I send her a message. I send her all of the materials for the show. I send her the pilot episode. I send her the show deck. I send her the show Bible. And I'm like, yeah, here's all the material for the show. Like, check it, read it over. Let me know what you think. And she reads it and she's like, this, this is amazing. I feel like I've
Wow.
literally just like stumbled on an untapped gold mine. Like, whatever it takes to make this show, I want to help you make this show. Let's set up a meeting
Wow.
with my agent so we can talk details. So I'm like,
Wow.
oh my God, this is amazing. So
Right.
we set up the meeting. I go into the meeting. At that time, I had this little short proof of concept that I had made, really just like an animatic, which is, for those that are unfamiliar with like animation terminology, basically it's like a bunch of storyboards, so a bunch of still images that are all strung together that are synced with audio. So it kind of gives you a very like rough, moving picture of what you can kind of expect. And it was like 5 minutes long.
Right.
And it was just like a very brief overview of what the show is about, the character, what he's dealing with, all that stuff. So I take the meeting with Angelica and her agent, and I send her all the material, including that little proof of concept. And in that meeting, the agent's like, yeah, so I reviewed the material. The thing that stuck out to me the most, though, was that little proof of concept that you sent me. Like, that was so amazing. I felt like it gave me such a great idea of what to expect in this world and this character. And also, by the way, who did the voice of Xerxes? Like, I was so blown away by their performance. Like, that was so good. Who did the voice of Xerxes? And I was like, oh, this is awkward. I did,
Right.
because I didn't have any other voice actor available. I couldn't pay to get a voice actor to do it, so I just did it myself.
Wow.
And she was like, "Wow, do you have an agent? Do you have representation?" And I was like, "No, I don't." She was like, "Well, you do now."
That's incredible.
And I was like, "Oh, uh, uh, okay." And
Right.
then it gets even more incredible. Every time I tell the story, I'm always it's always mind blowing to me every time I relive it. So she's like, "Okay, so we have to think about other attachments we want for this project. So you got Angelica. It's going to be a great draw. We should probably seek to attach at least 2 other people. So tell me, who do you want? Who's on your dream list of who you want for Captain Zero?" And I was like, oh man, I've been waiting for you to ask me this question, because
Right.
right off the bat, Keith David. I know that for sure, for certain. Since
Right.
I conceptualized this show, I knew I needed him. I'm like, I need Keith. And she looks at me with a smile and she's like, Keith is one of my clients, right?
Are you kidding?
I was like, are you serious? She's like, yeah, that's just a phone call. That's just an email. And I'm like, so like, you want me to send him the material? And I'm like, yes, please send him the material. And then like about 2 weeks later, I got a signed LOI in my email, Keith David, attached to the project.
Excellent. That
Yeah.
is something. And I'm sure folks that are listening know who Keith David is. But if you
Mm-hmm.
don't, I mean, we could just go on and on about the movies, the films, and so forth.
Oh my
And,
goodness.
and when you talk about voice, you said that
Oh.
distinctive voice, if
Mm-hmm.
you don't know who he is, I'm sure you've
You've
heard.
heard of him. You've heard of him, no doubt. You've heard of him.
I mean, this man has been in Disney films, Princess and the Frog, Voice of
Mm-hmm.
Spawn, Thing,
Mm-hmm.
They Live. I mean, we can go on and on and on. So if you don't know who he is, go look him up, and I guarantee you, you're gonna say,
You know.
"Oh, that's who that guy is." You know who
Mm-hmm.
he is. No, that's incredible. So in terms of so you got the voice actors, you got
Mm-hmm.
all this put together. What are some of the other steps that are happening to bring this thing to life?
So shortly after that time, we attached a couple of other actors to the project, and then we started actively pitching it once we
Okay.
had the full package together. So we started reaching out to various different production companies. We got a lot of great responses from people. And then we met this, I'm probably not allowed to say their name yet, but
Okay.
we met this production company,
Excellent.
really great Black-owned production
Okay.
company. And they were just super interested in the project. They were really, really vibing with it. And then that's right when the writer strike happened. Like a day after our meeting, the writer strike happened. And I was like, oh, and then everything came to a grinding halt. And then
Right.
I remember, talking to my writing partner, Andre, and I was like, man, like I feel like we were right there, like so
Right.
close. I was like, what do we do now? And Andre was like, well, we just do what we always do. We grind. So I was like, all right, bet. So we're just gonna do that. We just kept writing scripts. We kept, further fleshing out the stories and ideas. And then this is like early July. I get a DM from someone named Chris Carthrin, and he comes across to me, and at this point in time, we had just put out part 1 of our short film. called Captain Zero Into the Abyss, which is on YouTube right now. If you type in Captain Zero Into the Abyss, you'll find it. It'll literally be the first video you see.
Right.
And he was like, "Oh my God, I just saw Captain Zero Into the Abyss. I loved it. It was so dope. It was so amazing. The themes and messages really, really resonate with me. Like, oh my goodness, like, but it ends on a cliffhanger, and it was done that way intentionally." And he's like, "But it ends on such a crazy cliffhanger. Like, have you ever thought about making a part two? And if you haven't thought about making a part two, I got $2,000 for you. Oh, I got $8,000 for you right
Wow.
now to
Wow.
make a part two." And I was like, I haven't thought about making a part two, but you know what? I think I might. I think I might be able to. But I was like, before I do that, I was like, I need to see if I can get Keith to be a part of this part two, because he's not a part of part one. Part one is literally just me and Angelica going back and forth. We show the depression demon. There's a
Right.
visual of him, but there's no sound. You never hear him talk or anything like
Right.
that. So I was like, if I do this part two, it's got to be right. One, first and foremost, I need most of the main cast. But most importantly, I need Keith. If I can't have Keith in this part two, there's literally no point in making it. So I was like, let me reach out to my agent and see what she says. So I reach out to my agent. I'm like, hey, I just got approached by this investor. They've got $8,000 for me. They want we're talking about possibly making a part two. What's Keith's availability looking like? And at this point in time, the actors had also gone on strike.
Right.
But then this was maybe like a couple of weeks into it, SAG had announced that they were doing this thing called interim agreements, where basically if a production company agreed to the new rules that they were trying to set as the new standard of practice for all of the bigger studios, then their production could be cleared for production as well as promotion.
Gotcha.
So my agent told me, she was like, Keith is only working on projects that have been cleared with an interim agreement. So that's the only thing he's working on right now. So I was like, okay, so you're telling me if I get an interim agreement, then I can get Keith in this project, right?
Right.
And she's like, yeah, that's no problem. So I was like, say less. Went to SAG-AFTRA's website, filed the paperwork. It took about 2 weeks, but we got it. Once I got the paperwork and they were like, you were cleared for production, I forwarded that email to my agent. I was like, we got it. We're clear. Let's do it. So she was like, bet, that's no problem. Reached out to Keith. Keith let me know his availability. He's like, he's available this date, this date, this date, this date. And I was like, all right, boom, we got it. We got movement. Let's go. And then yeah.
Wow, that is a fascinating story. And just looking forward to seeing just how far you can take this thing, because I just don't hear any limitations on it. So I'm really excited to see this thing take off. And please, as you grow with this project and the projects gets bigger and more successful, don't forget us. Come on back, let us know what's happening with it, because like I said, this is just a great overall project. So talked about the show, its creation, the themes, where you plan on taking this. Let me ask you this, because once again, believe it or not, we're almost at the end, and I always ask my guests this question. What is your vision for Black people in the future, and what role do you see yourself playing to help make that happen?
Man, oh, that's such a great question. Especially given everything that's going on in the world right now, what I really see for Black people in the future is being able to have more self-determination. Black people being able to define Blackness by their own standards, by their own merit. Like I tell people all the time, like my role as an artist and as a creator, obviously I love art and that is my main passion and joy. But more than anything, I feel like my real job in this world is really to not just inspire people, but also to help people in a very tangible way. Like if everything goes according to plan, my film career will last about 20, 25 years. And then honestly, I want to retire and then just go into activism work, go into work that has to do with specifically helping people, helping address mental health, specifically in the Black community, helping to address ableism, disabled Black people, just helping all forms of every issue that we're dealing with right now. Like I'm really, really big on wanting to give back to Haiti, my parents are native to Haiti. I was born here in America, but that connection, that lineage, being the first free Black nation in the world. Like there's so many beautiful things about Haiti, such a beautiful history of Haiti, and so many things that people don't know. Like it really, really bothers me when people talk about Haiti being the poorest country in the world, but nobody ever asks why.
Exactly.
Especially when you look at like the exports that Haiti are making in a year. And it's like, oh, well, Haiti's on average making about $2 billion in exports. But if you look at what the country's overall net worth is, it's like negative $500,000. And it's like, that doesn't make any sense. The math is not mapping there.
Right,
How is
right,
that possible? And
right.
it's because there are all of these people,
Hmm.
systems, institutions
Right,
that are actively keeping the people of Haiti down, literally
right.
stealing all of their resources, stealing all of their exports. And what I would really like to do, what my goal is for the future, is to be able to give Haiti back its sovereignty, for Haiti to be able to be a country that has its own self-determination again. So should everything go according to plan, and I hope this is again me, like I did with that tweet,
Right,
putting it out into the universe and
right.
manifesting it. The goal is to be able to do that, to leverage my status, to leverage my notoriety, and to be able to give back and to really, really transform my country, my people into the real life Wakanda. Like a lot of people don't know, Haiti really is the real life Wakanda. Like the reason why Ryan Coogler decided in Wakanda Forever to include so much of Haiti, and even T'Challa's son being named after Toussaint, is a lot of people don't know that Haiti is the second largest export of one of the most valuable metals in the world. And this metal is used to create the metal that they use to line rocket ships and spacecrafts. There's literally a whole
Right,
mountain of it
right,
sitting in Haiti. Like
right,
Haiti is the real life Wakanda.
right,
And people don't know this. That's not something that a lot of people know. Iridium is the name of the metal.
right.
And it's like, yeah, these are the kinds of things that I really, really see and hope and wish and want for Black people in the future. Self-determination, sovereignty, the ability to be able to, again, define Blackness for ourselves and to be able to live truly free.
Well, I can tell you this, you are off to a great start. In making these things happen for yourself and for us, because like I said, this project is so important, and your message is just as important. So all I can say is I'm just wishing you all the success in the world.
Oh
And
man,
like I say,
thank you. Same here.
anytime you want to come back to talk about this project or anything else you're working on. And real quick, I know Captain Zero is at the forefront. You're trying to get this done. Is there
Mhm.
anything that you're working on? It's kind of like in the vault right now. You can give us a little inkling of some other project, or is all your concentration and energy on this?
Oh no, we got multiple projects going. I'm working with an amazing animation studio that I'm the animation director of, Studio Maho. We've got a project called God Punch right now. We're trying to get that into the ecosystem next year. My writing partner, who's also one of my best friends, Andre Enko, we're also trying to get his project off the ground, Space Friends. Man, and then after that, so many other things. Necromancer, Nynx the Dream Warrior. The sleigh goes on and on. There are
Actually,
ideas for days.
right, right. No, that is
Yeah,
awesome. That is
but
awesome.
those two, yeah, God Punch and Space Friends. Be on the lookout for those. Those are coming real, real soon.
Excellent. I got to ask you again before we let you go. One more time, how can folks find you?
You guys can find me on all social media platforms at Lamard Cher-Aimé. That is LAMARD CHERAIME. And then you can find Captain Zero on all platforms at Captain Zero TAS.
Excellent. One more time, brother. Thank you so much for being on Into the Afroverse. Truly appreciate you coming on board. And
Thank you for having me.
oh, not a thing. Like I said, man, all the success in the world, expecting big things. And like I said, anytime you want to come back and talk about this project, the next project, Keith David, whatever, you just come on
Most definitely.
and,
Most
and
definitely.
let us know. So one more time, this is Into the Afroverse with your host, William Jones. And remember, Into the Afroverse is where we're taking Black folks into the future. And people are always asking, how can they support? How can they keep this show on air? Once again, go to the website, afrofuturismnet.com, Afrofuturism Network, afrofuturismnet.com, and you can donate. You can also sponsor the show. So just hit me up, let me know how you would like to contribute to keep this show on, so we keep bringing you great guests like Lamar. So special shout out to Mr. Duke Productions for producing today's episode. And don't forget, you can listen to past episodes on the YouTube page, Afrofuturism Network. And with that, I would like to say have a good day. Take care of yourselves. One more time, Lamar, thank you so much for being part of the show. Take care.
All right, you too.